now that I've finished filming yet another multi-figure slog, which is to say the filming, not the figures themselves, I figure, no pun intended, it's time to take a look at another thing that I've had sitting in the collection for a while that I just haven't made a video on yet, and that is Hero Hobby's Tiny Magnus. I've seen this figure referred to as City Captain in the past, but I can't find anything to accurately, like, a lot of the stuff I see, they just go by Tiny Magnus, and also Tiny Magnus is what's on the instruction booklet, so I'm just going to go with Tiny Magnus. And this guy is indeed a Tiny Magnus. There's no real good place for the weapon to store as far as I know. It's just there. You can, as you saw, just kind of set it up there. I wonder if this little fin can slide between the slightly, but not really. So yeah, you can't really do much with the weapon, which is why I just have it sitting up there. But this is a weird looking little blaster that can transform. We'll see that later. And I do not care for the weapon in either mode because he doesn't hold it well, but we'll see that when we get to it. For the time being, let's just look at this. And this is a kind of cute SD style Ultra Magnus truck, where you've got the trailer, you've got the white cab, the primarily blue and red trailer, the primarily white cab. Doesn't roll super well, but it does roll. And it looks the part. It's definitely crowded in a few places. Like in the back here, it's very, very crowded. You can't pull these bits down to act as ramps or anything like that. It doesn't hold together super great. Like it does hold together, but it is very easy for it to kind of pop itself out. And also these bits, it's strange, but like these tabs seem like they're supposed to tab inside these side pieces here, but they kind of don't, but they kind of do. Like there are actual tab slots there, but when I try to tap them in, the thing is angled down. It's weird, but I'll show you. So yeah, they can tab in, and now everything is nice and snug. There's even like a little thing in here that kind of fills in, like it goes into like a little slot on the underside of what will become the forearms, because that's an Ultra Magnus. Of course, that's the forearms. But you can kind of see that it's now at this weird angle where it's just going down slightly. So like, I don't know. It seems like that's intended to lock everything together, and it does help to lock things together more, but it just angles down weird, and I don't really get any of it. But yeah, with all of that out of the way, this is Hero Hobby Tiny Magnus. It is Hero Hobby, which means, for anyone who's unfamiliar with Hero Hobby, there's going to be some stress marks on this thing. Nothing's broken so far. Knock on wood. Find some wood to knock on. There we go. And yeah, he still holds up. It's just a little concerning in a few places, but as far as I know, this guy's doing okay. I wish I could get their Tiny Rex, which is their version of Grimlock, but that thing is either really hard to find. Now I have hiccups for some reason, or if I do find it, it's for absurd amounts of money. So for now, at least, we've got Tiny Magnus. And like I said, it's Ultra Magnus in truck mode, with the cab kind of doing most of the heavy lifting here. But there's a lot of interesting detail around here. There's a lot of interesting stylization. I really like the stylization, how the windows are very kind of squished in and stretched out, which kind of fits the whole SD vibe. And yeah, it's a truck cab that looks like it probably turns into a robot, but I don't know. For what it is, I like it. And it does roll, as you saw, and also this does articulate doesn't go very far. There we go. It doesn't go very far, but it does rotate, and it can roll kind of. And it is also, despite being an SD Magnus, it is actually pretty sizable. I mean, it's not big, but it's bigger than you might think, given the whole deal with this guy. Let's bring in Dinobot, Ova Prime, our Paul Deluxe representative, Samus, and Burnout. And like the cab is maybe not as big as a Deluxe, but like it's close to the size of a Deluxe. It's a pretty beefy cab. And whoops, I have scrambled the eggs of Ova Prime. And because Ultra Magnus, I figured why not? Let's bring in Commander Class Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus. And here I think you can get a better idea. If you're familiar with this guy anyway, you can get a better idea of how Tiny Magnus is definitely tiny in comparison, but not small. He's not Legend scale. Not exactly. And of course, for the most important size comparison we can do on the channel, here is, there we go. Here is Tiny Magnus with the duck tank. Now, before we start transforming this little guy, if you like this video or any other videos that I've done on the channel and would like to support me, I do have Patreon or a Ko-fi. Links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, you could always do the typical YouTube thing of like, comment, share, subscribe. Now to transform this guy, and this is a thing. So we're gonna do the body first. What you want to do is untab these red sections from the side. They actually push in and then swing down. They actually kind of go in around this hook tab here on both sides. I accidentally untabbed this one, but push that in, swing this down, hold this red piece around, and then, also, I'm going to take the little missile thingies off. Now we can split the back section, and it tabs in a lot of places. And once that's untabbed, we can disconnect the arms. You kind of want to rock it a little bit so that you can get it around this little tab thing, because it kind of sits over this little groove in the arm. And also there is this little peg hole there that kind of tabs into. But it also doesn't seem to, it's weird. I could be doing it all wrong, I don't know. We're just going to rotate the arms up for now. Now, this is some interesting stuff. So one of the things you want to do is the legs, when these are in, actually, let me show this off. There's a tiny tab here, and there's a little gap here in the leg. That's where this little red tab actually sits in there, and that little gray tab sits in there. You can kind of see that tab on this side, and you can also kind of see how that plugs in there. So you want to pull this out first. Once that's pulled out, you can extend the leg. It's on a slider, and it will kind of click in place. Then bring the leg down. We'll do the same on this side. Pull that out, bring it down. Now what's cool about the slider is this is actually really clever. I appreciate this. So this is slid down and clicked in place, but it could get pushed back in. So what you do is you swing this up to give you the leg, and then this piece that was making up the side of the truck that swings down like this, now this entire wheel section now swings in along with this bar. And this all swings in and becomes the bottom of the foot, and then this red piece that was the side of the trailer folds up, and this big piece will plug in here, and this tab will go into this little slot in here. And by that big rectangular piece jamming in there, that prevents the slider from being able to go back down. it still kind of shifts a little bit, but it's not going to slide back in. And that's really cool. That's really clever. I like when figures use sliders and actually have ways to like prevent the sliders from ever being a problem in the future. So again, fold this in, and tab it into the leg. And there is the lower body. Just going to flip this piece out for now. And now we've got all this going on. So now I want to split the arms, and they're just tabbed in up here. They don't really tab in at the up here. There is a little peg, but it's more of a guide. It's not like this isn't holding anything in place. That's just to keep them from sliding back and forth. So what you want to do is untab here, and then these red pieces, the whole thing actually rotates around with the arms attached. So that gets those out of the way. And now for the arms, they just slide. So you slide this in, and that will click, and slide this back, and that will also kind of click. It's not as secure as I'd like, but it's also not super load-bearing, so I feel like it's going to be okay over time. And while we're here, we can plug the missile launcher thing back into this side of the shoulder, because it was pegged in here for the truck mode, and now it's going to be pegged in here for the robot mode. And then collapse the arm in, bring that down, and we are on our way. Okay, there we go. So, for the cab, let's angle this up a bit. The cab is, of course, the most complex part. I want to push in the smokestacks, get them out of the way. You also want to lean the head back because it sits into this channel here, so you want to lean that back, and that will allow you to rotate the entire cab section 180 degrees. So I've got all that rotated. The truck cab also slides forward, so you kind of have to wiggle it because you have to get these little panels up, but they do come up, and then you can slide this forward. And with this slid forward, now we can rotate the head around. And it is in there pretty good. It does kind of scrape against things a bit, but it will get out of the way. So just kind of flex this out a little bit and push this down. The head crest, I should say, will squeak just through this gap in here. And then this can come the rest of the way up. Now, while we're doing this, I'm actually going to hold this down. But I want to keep these up. And then for the rest of the truck cab, you kind of want to pull the grill section up just a little bit so that you can untab these side flaps and fold them in. There's a little tab there that you kind of have to pull back just a little bit to give yourself enough room to bring it down, because the slots that they tab into, they are slots. They're not like grooves that they can be like unfolded into. So do that. I want to untab the grill section and swing it up, rotate it around 180 degrees, and then bring it down, and it will plug-ish in. Like, it doesn't really plug in, but it sits against all of this. And you want to make sure to kind of bring it in at an angle and then push it in the rest of the way so that it lines up with what's going on in here. Because it can get off-center like this, and then that'll make the rest of the transformation a little more difficult than it needs to be. So, now we have all this going on. We can make sure the head's up. You want to make sure the head's up. And then push these flaps down a little bit and slide this back into place. And with that slid back into place, we can push these panels back down, and they will help to hold this whole assembly together. But they don't like to play well with the robot mode head. I guess while I'm doing this, I'm also going to slide this down. There we go. Get this nice and pushed together along the back. This panel should stay down, and it is not. But let me try and figure that out in a minute. So with all of this done, now arm out of the way so you can see what's happening here. With all this done, you can see there's a cutout here for this grill section to sit. That just goes right in there. And all of that sits together nicely. Then this piece comes up and built-in chest. And for whatever reason, this panel just does not want to. There we go. And make sure these little panels are down. And that should do it. It's got all the torso together. And we're just about done. Just a little bit more we've got to do with the head, because the head has to compact a bit to actually fit into the cab section. So you want to pull up on these little earpieces, but you also kind of want to pull out a little bit and keep pulling up, and this little silver piece will kind of fill in the side of the head. That's how you know you pulled them out far enough. So pull up and out a bit, wiggle those out, make sure that the head is filled in, and then take the head crest and pull it up. And there we go. There is tiny Magnus in his robot mode, and this is a tiny Ultra Magnus. It's very cute, but also kind of neat. Surprisingly clean, too. Like, the transformation is a little bit fiddly, especially with regards to the cab, but I kind of can't argue with the results. I actually really like the way this guy looks. The only thing that stinks is the articulation is a little bit tricky to do because of how some of the joints are designed, but we will get into that. But yeah, he looks the part. He looks like Ultra Magnus, only small and cute. Or small-ish. Small proportioned and cute. He hits all the right notes. He's got the little door shins, or what look like door shins, the giant pylon shoulders, the chest plate thing, the Magnus-y head. And yeah, this is very cool. It's, as I said, definitely got some issues with, you can kind of see on the inside there, I think a little bit, there's some stressing going on inside that track. There are other things on this guy too that are, could be better. There's a lot of stuff on this guy that's kind of like, I don't quite know what they were thinking, but it's still a neat little figure for what it is. And also, there's a little button on the missile launcher thing here. If you actually push the button, it launches the missiles, which is cute. It's not super effective, but it's cute. And they do hold in once you push them back in. So yeah. There, whoop. Make me a liar, okay? There we go. I guess one wasn't all the way in. But yeah. There's lots of nice little detailing on this guy. The molding is interesting. There's actually some surprisingly detailed greebling in the thighs, and even in like the insides of the legs. He comes together surprisingly well for being this kind of design. I think that's really cool. Also, if you wanted to, you can fold down his chest piece and swing open his chest and open that up, and he has a teeny matrix. I don't know if it comes out. I think it does, but I'm not going to bother trying to take it out. But yeah, he has a teeny matrix. I just think that's fun. And can close this back up, bring this back up. close this all up again. Come on. Come on. There. Oh, there we go. It was off-centered. Come on, why aren't you plugging back in? Hero hobby stuff. Yeah, I would advise not leaving the matrix chamber open because this is what locks the cab to the lower part of the body. So if you leave that open, it will cause problems if you start moving the figure around. But he's neat. I like this little guy, even with his problems. Now, that head is a very, very Ultra Magnus head. It's even got his kind of stoic frown. Nice detailing. He's got the face and ears different colors. This is actually inverse from like the Studio Series, where the Studio Series has a silver face and white ears or antenna. This one has silver antenna and a white face. But I feel like it still gets the point across. And it looks the part. The helmet shape is kind of, I want to say almost perfect for Ultra Magnus head. And he does a face swap gimmick, which is interesting. Do that. If you don't want to do the stoic face, you fold this back and you can see the other face in there. So you want to flip the other face out. Then take the stoic face and flip it in, and then bring all of this back down. And that will cover it all up. And now he has a shouty face. And I prefer the shouty face, one, because I think it gives him more personality, but two, because the open mouth gives you a little bit more coloring in the face. It just kind of helps to set things apart. But you got options. I like that you got options. Now, for his articulation, as you saw, the head is actually on a ball joint, which is surprisingly effective regardless of which face you have. So you can tilt side to side, look up and down. Depending on the face you have attached or flipped out, you can kind of use that joint for the face swap. So like if you have this face out, you can use that joint to kind of fake looking up a little bit further. So I prefer to just not. And then he does rotate all the way around. So pretty expressive there. The shoulders can go all the way around. They can go in and out, but it's tricky because those pylons will hit the head. And you've got a ball joint, which is really stiff, but it does work. And then you've got this other joint that can go in and out. And then you also have this red piece that can rotate to also kind of act as a shoulder joint. And that ball joint gives you a bit of like butterfly motion too. So it's a little tricky to pose his arms, especially because, as I said, those pylons can and will knock into the rather large head, but it can be done. He has double jointed elbows, so you've got the upper joint and then a lower joint, and you can bend both of them in tandem to get a little over 90 degrees of bend. So if you want to get more, if you push things down a bit, you can get a deeper bend because it's basically the forearm piece clashing with the shoulder piece is what's keeping it from bending all the way, but it still gets you more than 90. The fists do actually rotate and the fingers open. So some pretty decent articulation on the hands too. You get a waist swivel. It goes all the way around. The hips are ratcheted, so they can go out all the way. Problem is, if you bring the legs out one click, it looks a little bit funny, but you can go out. You get thigh rotation that is blocked by the sculpt going on here, so you can only rotate like this far when the hip's down. Rotate a bit further when it's out more, a bit further, and then yeah, basically just how far you can rotate depends on how far out the hip is. And for the toes, they're on ball joints that are connected up here, so you can point the toe up a bit You can't really point it down, but you can rotate it to act as, like, it's not really an ankle tilt, but it kind of fakes an ankle tilt. It makes it look like he's, let's zoom out here a little bit and actually look at his feet. It makes it look like he's got his feet planted. Now the knees. He does have knees. They're not great, but he has them. Now what you do is you just bend them, and they are kind of ratcheted, but not exactly, and they don't entirely go to 90, but they do bend. Now the thing to remember with these knees is they're actually designed to click into the straight position. So when you're going back into truck mode, when you bring the knee up, you won't be able to straighten out the leg by just trying to flex it. You actually want to, what I find works is kind of grab the hip, grab the shin, and kind of pull up and in like that, because there's this little gray tab here. This little one in the front here, that actually kind of clips over this. So you want to bring this in and it'll click into place. And you can see that is clicked into place. So yeah, you want to do that when you're going into the vehicle mode. Otherwise, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time getting the legs straight. Yeah, he is a weird but also fun little Magnus who is surprisingly posable, but also a little bit tricky to pose. He's a kind of a, I can't really say walking contradiction because he doesn't walk, but he is a bit of a contradiction as a toy. Now that weapon. It looks pretty good. It's got the gray and the blue as far as colors go, but it's like painted over it. It's a little bit translucent at the top. The gun doesn't look bad. He just can't hold it well, and that's a bummer. So it's as you'd expect. You just close the fingers, and the peg goes into the hand, and he holds it, and it's like that. And like no amount of futzing with it really gets it to hold in place. Like I try to squeeze the fingers around it, and that kind of sort of gets it to at least not flop around terribly, but like this is not in there. That is crap. For lack of a better term, that is crap. And that really irritates me. That irritates me more about this guy than any of the other stuff. The transformation, you just slide this out, swing this down, and then there's this piece here. You actually want to kind of angle it a bit so you can slide it down, because it's like this for the gun mode. So you slide this down and get it kind of clicked in so that it's like this. And then this will slide down and you end up with a hammer. Which again, not a bad idea. It looks good, but you put this in his hand, and again, he doesn't really hold it very well. Like it's not like he holds this better than the gun, especially because due to the way this comes together, it's not going to pop out. But I don't like it. You can, if you want, slide this back in and have it more like this. And then if you rotate the forearm and then rotate the hand, because you want to not have this piece blocking the underside of the hand, you can slide this in, and this will actually go into here. So you can slide this through and kind of peg it together on the other side, kind of. And that holds better, but it still doesn't hold great. And you can see that it's not really going all the way down. So, and actually this came out, as I think the fingers are getting in the way. So yeah, he doesn't hold his weapon well, and that is a bummer. But aside from that, aside from that and the jank, he's actually pretty cool. And I've already said this, but like I'm okay with the jank. Like it would be better if he didn't have it, but with everything that is happening here, I just think he's fun and neat and an interesting approach to Ultra Magnus. I kind of wish we got more figures like this. And I know there is Hero Hobby Tiny Rex, and then there have been a couple other SD style Transformers in the recent few months, years, whatever. Like Magic Square has their Optimus Prime. There's a KO or third-party company, I forget which, that's doing like a Rise of the Beast style Optimus that's super deformed. If they do a Nemesis, I'm probably going to get it because it's me. But yeah, I like this stuff because it's interesting. It's a little bit different, but this is also kind of cool because it's reminiscent of Ultra Magnus. It's very clearly Ultra Magnus, but also still kind of doing its own thing, which is really fun and entertaining. It just stinks that the the figure has a fair bit of unevenness, let's say, with some of the way it comes together is a little awkward. I can actually see that this piece is misaligned already, so we'll just shove that back into place. Yeah, he is a little jank, as I said, but I can't stay mad. He's too interesting for me to be mad at the jank. All right. Now, as far as size goes, as I said, he's a little bit bigger than you might expect. Bring in Dinobot. He is clearly not the size of a tall Voyager. He's more in line with our tall deluxe equivalent, or regular deluxe even. And yeah, he kind of sits between current modern deluxe height, average current modern deluxe height, and tall modern deluxe height. Which again, you wouldn't really think given the aesthetic and proportions this guy's going for, but I don't mind it. Now let's bring in some other Magni comparisons. I have more than just Studio Series 86 Magnus, but like, yeah, the two of these boys together. Tiny Magnus is definitely the Tiny Magnus in this in this shot. And say what you will, I quite like Studio Series 86 Ultra Magnus, despite a couple of gripes. I think he looks great. The transformation, for the most part, is really interesting. He does some cool stuff. He looks the part. But if someone were to say which, if I was told you have to decide which of these two Ultra Magnus toys looks more visually interesting, I'm going to go with Tiny Magnus, because he just has more personality. And I'm all about quirky personality in my toys. Once upon a time, I had a piece of transforming sushi. Seriously, it's on the channel somewhere. But here's another Magnus. There is Generation Selects Shattered Glass Ultra Magnus with repro labels and also painted eyes. And I still really like this guy too, but again, I feel like there's just something about the aesthetic and personality of this guy that really shines, even when he's in the presence of what I would consider better toys. Which, it's not to say that Tiny Magnus is bad, just I think the other Magnus toys I have are technically better. And not technically, but blatantly objectively better is the New Age version in original G1 toy colors. This is still just, I freaking love this thing. I said it before, but I'm reiterating it now because I just love that toy so much. But But yeah, even looking at these two side by side, as much as I absolutely adore this figure, and he's still one of my all-time favorites, this guy still kind of stands out, again, because of the more interesting approach, the more interesting design aesthetic and proportions, obviously. But still, this guy is fantastic, and I am just so happy I have him. Will always be happy I have him. And finally, let's bring this rambling to a close. Here is Tiny Magnus with the duck tank. And that does it for Hero Hobby Tiny Magnus. As I've said many times, I really like this guy. He is a mess. He is a little jank. Articulation is kind of irritating at times, because especially if he's holding his weapon, the weapon does not like to stay in his hand no matter what you do. The sliders for the forearms and the shoulders, particularly the forearms, don't always like to stay in place, so I'm constantly having to readjust those. The ratchets on the legs are spaced in a way that make them kind of annoying to use. The knees are weird. Posing the head can sometimes be a challenge because it's really easy. Like, it's not so bad once I figured out to like really kind of pull up and out to get these antenna in place, but like it's not too hard to accidentally push them back down. And it's also really easy to push this down when you don't want to. So yeah, it's you gotta be careful when posing this guy, which does make it a little bit irritating. It's not terrible, it's just he's a little finicky, let's say. And the plastic, as I said, seems to really like getting stressed. It's so far, again, knock on wood, has not actually broken on me. It just really likes to stress. Especially some of the joints. Like there's an armature that connects the grill piece to the rest of the cab that I don't know if it was stressed out of the box and I never noticed or what, but like that's stressed. I think there might be a crack on one of the hinges, but he still functions, so yeah, as long as he still functions. But anyway, that's enough rambling. That has been my look at Hero Hobby Tiny Magnus. What do you all think of this guy? Or Hero Hobby Tiny Rex. If anyone has a line on a affordable, by which I mean not like $150 to $200 Tiny Rex that's in good shape, feel free to let me know. But yeah, this guy, Tiny Rex, other Ultra Magnus toys, whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see what I feel like doing for the next video. I have no idea what it's going to be right now. Oh, actually, real quick, forgot to do this. Come here. Gun does actually work with the blast effect, kind of. It doesn't go in all the way because of these like bits going in on the sides, but you can kind of wedge it in there. So you can use blast effects with the gun. Not so much the hammer, but you can use them with the gun.